What's up guys, welcome back to the cover crop area in our food forest, and today I wanted to do a second part to this video. The first part was talking about the benefits of using a cover crop in your garden or a green manure crop. This area through here was just blank topsoil that I laid on the ground and I had to cover it with something, so I decided to use these. But in today's video I'm going to actually be terminating this crop and showing you how I'm going to do that, and also showing you how I'm going to use some of the material in my garden. There's quite a few different ways to do it, so I'm going to be showing you a few of those today, including making a no-dig garden bed and using the cover crop material as one of the layers. And later on in the video as well, I'm going to be showing you the no-dig garden bed in a couple of months once we've planted it up and the plants are growing, and that way you guys can see the results of using a no-dig style garden bed. So these are well overdue to be terminated. I just haven't really had time to do it, but usually people cut them down before they flower, especially plants like these lupins, because when they get to flowering stage the stems harden up and go a bit more woody, and that just means they don't break down as fast. It has actually been pretty cool watching these go to flower though, and seeing all the bees and other insects enjoying it and getting some good benefits from it. I'm kind of interested, especially with like these lupins, to see them go to seed and see how many seeds they actually produce from a few plants. So I'll leave a bit of a patch in for the insects, but the rest of it is going to go. So for chopping these plants down, I'm going to be using a weed eater, and this is one with a blade. Basically, as I do it, I'm going to be chopping it kind of from the top and working my way down in pieces so that it chops the plants up, rather than just chopping them at the base and then having a whole plant which takes longer to decompose. So the reason I'm cutting the cover crops down to terminate them as opposed to tilling or digging them into the soil is to avoid damaging the soil structure. So these plants during their growth have already done such a great job at preventing erosion and providing a good environment for soil life. And so if I go ahead and till the soil and turn it over, it's going to kill a lot of the soil life by leaving it exposed to the sun. Plus, when you disturb the soil, it often brings weed seeds up from deeper down and allows them to germinate. So instead of digging, by using a no-dig method and leaving the roots in place in the soil and just covering the top of the soil with a layer of your mulched up plants, you end up with a lot of microbe activity breaking down the roots of the plants, and you also end up with a lot of worms munching away at the roots. And as the roots decompose and die away, they leave thin little tunnels in place where the roots were, and that helps to aerate the soil and promotes really good soil health. With chopping the material from the top of the plant and working your way down, you end up with more finely chopped material compared with if you chop it at the base and lay the plants down on the ground like this, which is totally fine, but they just take a bit longer to decompose. So with all this biomass that I've grown, I'm going to be leaving a lot of it just on the ground to decompose directly in place. But what you can do as well is take some of this and compost it. I don't have a large composting system to do that right now, but that's another good way that you can make your own compost and then return it back to your garden as some really good nutritious homemade stuff. Another way I'm going to use this biomass though is placing it around some of my fruit trees. So this is one of my feed rows and it does need to be mulched. So I'm just going to place some of this around here, place on some cardboard over the top, and then put some wood chip mulch over top of that. So the extra layer of cover crops that I've put at the base should be a good addition to add more nutrients and organic matter into the soil and help to feed my tree. The third way that I'm going to use cover crops in the garden is to layer them as part of a no-dig bed. So let's get onto that process now. So we've had this black plastic down on the ground because we had some compost sitting on top of it. That's all been used up now though, and so basically underneath we've just got this bare patch of dirt. I could of course make the no-dig bed where we had our cover crops, but I do want to use that area for developing more of a food forest, so we'll just use this area up here for our no-dig bed. So usually when I start one of these beds, I put a layer of cardboard down or newspaper, basically to kill all the grass and weeds underneath and stop them getting any sunlight. I'm going to skip that step today though, because the ground's already bare, there's nothing growing there except for just a few weeds, so I will just put some newspaper directly on top of those ones. So to start off with, I'm adding some dried leaves that I collected back in autumn. I don't have much left at all though, so to make a decent layer, I'm going to use some straw instead. And both of these materials create a brown layer, which I'm going to water in really well now. So next up I'm doing a green layer. So this is some of the cover crop material that we cut down today, and I'm just spreading that over the whole area. So basically now I'm just going to alternate brown and green layers to build this garden bed up and add some other materials that I have around as well. So I've got some chicken manure that I'm chucking through this bed, and I also have some of this mulch / seaweed sort of stuff that washes up on the beaches near where I live. I think a lot of it washes down the rivers and out to sea before washing back up on the beach, but there's seaweed and other bits and pieces all mixed through there, so it should be pretty good. I've also got some coffee grounds here which I'm going to sprinkle around this bed, but basically you guys can just use what you have around, what you have available to you. The good thing about making this sort of bed is you can find a lot of the materials for free, and you can basically use whatever materials you have on hand. You don't have to use this many layers, you can simply use just cardboard and then compost on top of that. It's really just up to you and what you have available. So now I'm just adding one more brown layer of straw followed by one more green layer of cover crop material. Last thing to do is to add a good layer of compost over the top to plant directly into. A lot of the beds I've done like this are in raised garden beds, and I've built them up with all these sort of layers, and I have planted directly in them and they've performed really well. With this bed though, we're going to wait a while because it's early spring and I haven't actually got my seedlings ready yet. So let's go and get our seedlings sorted, then we'll come back and plant it all up. Alright, so the corn seedlings are all done, but I've decided to not plant just corn. I do want to plant gourds and beans through this area in the Three Sisters method. If you haven't heard of this method before, basically it's a traditional way of gardening practiced by the indigenous people in North America, and the idea is that you plant corn, beans and gourds all together in one area, and they all occupy a different niche and provide benefits to one another. So these are some gourds that I started from seed, and I've got some different varieties here. So basically I'm just planting these roughly in between the corns, and the idea is that as they grow, their big leaves will shade out the ground and they'll provide this little microclimate underneath, and it will shade out weeds and it will help to retain moisture down in the soil as well. I've also got some bean seeds here, a couple of different types that I'll be interplanting as part of this method, and they'll be able to use the corn stems to grow up, so I won't need to provide any sort of climbing structure. So the last thing is just to water everything in really well, and we'll wait and see how it grows. So after 3 weeks, all the plants are looking really good. Some of the beans have popped up, the pumpkins have started to get more established, but yeah, just nice to see some really good growth so far. Man, so everything is putting on a ton of growth right now. It's all growing super fast. I've just had a look all through underneath all the plants, and the cool thing is that I can only find one single weed, and here it is here. It's super easy to pull out too, which is good. The ground's undisturbed and it doesn't really grow weeds, which is really awesome. I think if you sort of go through and till the soil first and bring up weed seeds that are further down, it's more likely to grow more weeds back and cause more issues in terms of weeds. So yeah, definitely one thing I've noticed is that with no-dig gardening, it has a huge benefit with not having many weeds. It is starting to get really dry now as we're moving into summer, so what I'm doing here is just putting a layer of straw over the top of the soil, and that way it's going to retain the moisture quite a bit. And then of course, as those pumpkins and gourds grow out all over top of the soil, it's going to shade the soil and help with that moisture retention. Anyway guys, I am going to leave the video there for today, but I will do an update when we go to harvest all of this food and we'll see how much we actually get from it. I also wanted to give a shout out to Eileen from Homegrown Happiness. She's got some great videos on no-dig gardening that really inspired me to give it a go myself. So if you guys want to check her out, I'll leave a link down below so you guys can see how she does it. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up down below, leave me a comment, let me know what you thought of it, and if you want to see the follow-up video where I harvest all of this food, then make sure you subscribe down below. Click the bell icon as well so you don't miss out on any future videos. But anyway, thanks heaps for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. As a side note, I did end up leaving some of the lupins in for the bees and let them fully go to seed, and I did end up with heaps of seeds from these, so I've harvested them all now, and I ended up with a huge bag of them. So these are after a couple of weeks once they've dried out, and as you can see they sort of untwist and then the seed in the middle just falls out. So yeah, just a really good way to kind of be self-sustaining and create your own seeds and be able to do this sort of thing again and again.